The email notification pinged at 8:47 a.m. My boss's name flashed across my phone screen, and my stomach dropped like I'd been shoved off a cliff. Conference room. Now. Bring everything related to the Morrison campaign. I'm Rachel, and I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. 2 hours earlier, I'd been riding the high of landing our agency's biggest client ever, a $12 million rebranding campaign that would make my career. I'd called Emma first, before anyone else, practically vibrating with excitement as I told her about the client meeting that had gone better than my wildest dreams. Rachel, that's incredible. Her voice had bubbled with genuine enthusiasm. You've been working toward this for years. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without everything you've taught me about consumer psychology, I'd said, meaning every word. Your insights about brand emotional triggers were brilliant. I quoted you in the presentation. You didn't have to do that. Of course I did. Credit where credit's due. I'd been pacing my office, too energized to sit still. This is going to change everything for both of us, for the whole family. Now, 3 hours later, I was walking toward what felt like my execution. 5 years. 5 years of grinding, of staying late while everyone else went home to their families, of building something from nothing. 5 years of mentoring my younger sister Emma, fresh out of college with a psychology degree and stars in her eyes, teaching her everything I knew about creative strategy, about client management, about surviving in an industry that chewed up idealistic graduates and spit them out. I'd been the one to get her the job at Morrison and Associates. I'd been the one to vouch for her when she struggled with her first campaign. I'd been the one working weekends to review her portfolios, staying up until 2 a.m. giving feedback on her presentations, fighting tooth and nail to get her promoted when management overlooked her potential. Emma hadn't just been my sister at work. She'd been my protégé, my success story, my pride and joy. The conference room's glass walls revealed more than I wanted to see. My parents sat in the waiting area, their faces stone-cold serious. Emma wasn't with them, but her absence spoke louder than her presence ever could. Mom's eyes met mine through the glass, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Doubt. My mind flashed back to last Christmas dinner when Emma had stood up to give a toast. To Rachel, she'd said, raising her wine glass with theatrical flourish. My big sister, my mentor, my hero. Everything I am professionally, I owe to her. The entire family had clinked glasses, beaming with pride at how well Emma was doing, how gracefully she'd stepped into the advertising world under my wing. Dad had pulled me aside later that night, his arm around my shoulders as we stood in the kitchen washing dishes. You've done such a good job with her, sweetheart. She worships the ground you walk under. You've given her everything. A career, confidence, purpose. We're so proud of how you've looked out for your little sister. Those words echoed in my head now as I watched my parents sit in judgment, waiting to hear whether their eldest daughter was a thief and a fraud. Rachel, sit down. Marcus, my boss, didn't look up from his laptop. His fingers drummed against the mahogany table, a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. I'd known Marcus for 8 years, since I was a junior account executive making coffee runs and staying until midnight to proof campaigns. He'd been the one to promote me to senior creative director. He'd been the one to greenlight my most ambitious projects. Now, he couldn't even look at me. I slid into the chair across from him, my portfolio clutched against my chest like armor that wouldn't protect me. The leather felt slick under my sweating palms. The Morrison campaign materials I'd brought lay scattered across the table. Months of work, my life's blood poured onto pages, now looking like evidence in my own prosecution. I received an interesting email this morning. His eyes finally found mine, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. Disappointment. From your sister. The words hit me like ice water. What kind of email? Marcus turned his laptop toward me. Emma's name glowed in the center field, and the subject line made my vision blur. Urgent. Copyright infringement. Morrison campaign theft. Legal action required. She claims you stole her work. Says she has timestamps, original files, witness statements, the whole thing. Marcus leaned back, his expression unreadable. She's requesting a formal investigation and immediate legal action against both you and the company for intellectual property theft. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The conference room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing closer with each second. The air conditioning hummed overhead, but I felt like I was suffocating. The Morrison campaign, I whispered. That's my project. You've seen me work on it every day for the past 4 months. She says otherwise. Says you've been taking credit for her ideas for months. Says you used your position as her supervisor and family member to suppress her contributions and pass them off as your own. Marcus's voice was clinical, detached, the voice he used with clients, not with people he'd known for nearly a decade. She's alleging systematic plagiarism, intellectual property theft, workplace harassment, and abuse of power. The portfolio slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a soft thud that might as well have been a gunshot. Pages scattered across the polished wood. Sketches I'd drawn during sleepless nights. Notes I'd scribbled during brainstorming sessions. Mood boards I'd assembled piece by piece. Marcus, you know me. You've seen me work on this for months. I've been here every weekend, every holiday. You've watched me build this campaign from nothing. I know what I thought I knew. His tone cut through my protest like a blade. But timestamps don't lie, Rachel. And she's provided very compelling evidence. More evidence than I've ever seen in a case like this. Through the glass, I watched my mother's face. She was nodding at something my father was saying, their heads bent together in urgent conversation. Mom's hands gestured sharply, the way they did when she was upset or trying to make a point. Dad kept glancing toward the conference room, his expression grave and deeply troubled. They believed her. My own parents believed Emma over me. She sent copies of original design files with creation dates going back 6 months, files that predate your submissions by weeks. Marcus pulled up another screen, scrolling through what looked like an extensive digital archive. Her writing samples for the campaign narrative, her strategy documents, her mood boards and client research, her competitive analysis, all time-stamped before yours. My hands started shaking, not just trembling, full-body shakes that I couldn't control. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself to something solid in a world that had suddenly lost all logic. That's impossible. I created those files. I wrote every word of that narrative myself. I spent 3 weeks on the mood boards alone, sourcing images, developing the visual language. Then explain this. He turned the screen again. Emma's design portfolio filled the display, page after page of work that looked exactly like mine. The Morrison logo variations I'd sketched during sleepless nights, the color palettes I'd agonized over for weeks, the typography choices that had taken endless revisions to perfect, everything was there. But these were dated 2 weeks before I'd even started the project. I don't understand. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, small and lost. This doesn't make sense. She wasn't even assigned to the Morrison account until March. She was working on the Henderson retail campaign. She also provided email correspondence between you two, where she claims you explicitly instructed her to keep her contributions quiet. Said you told her she'd get proper credit once the campaign was approved, but that revealing her involvement too early might jeopardize the account since she was still considered junior level. Marcus scrolled through a thread of messages that made my blood run cold. These emails are from your company account, Rachel. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling over. The emails on the screen showed my name, my signature, my writing style. But I had never written those words. In the messages, I was allegedly instructing Emma to stay quiet about her contributions, promising her credit when the time was right, and warning her that premature disclosure could damage both our careers. I would never write those things. Marcus, I've been trying to get Emma promoted for 2 years. Why would I hide her contributions? Your company account, your IP address, your writing style. Your typical email signature. Marcus's voice had gone completely professional, the warmth I'd known for years completely absent. She's also filed a complaint with HR alleging that you've been systematically undermining her career advancement in retaliation for her questioning your methods. She's my sister. The words came out as a broken whisper. I've been mentoring her since she graduated. I got her this job. I've fought for every raise, every promotion, every opportunity she's gotten here. She mentions that. Says you used your family relationship to manipulate her into silence. Says you threatened to have her fired and blacklisted from the industry if she spoke up about your theft of her intellectual property. Marcus's voice softened slightly, but his words hit like hammer blows. She says you told her that nobody would believe a junior employee over a senior creative director with your track record and family connection. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to make sense of what was happening. The fluorescent lights felt harsh against my skin. Everything too bright and overwhelming. 5 years of teaching Emma everything I knew, from client psychology to presentation skills to creative strategy. 5 years of staying late to review her work, of fighting for her credibility in meetings, of protecting her from the office politics she was too young and inexperienced to navigate. 5 years of building her career, and she was using that foundation to destroy mine. There's more, Marcus said quietly, and my stomach dropped even further. She's provided witness statements from other employees who say they've seen her working on Morrison-related materials in the evenings and weekends, often crying at her desk because she felt her work wasn't being recognized. Witness statements? My voice cracked. Jennifer from accounting says she saw Emma staying late multiple nights working on what she described as campaign materials for that big account Rachel's always talking about. Derek from IT says Emma came to him asking about file recovery, claiming she needed to retrieve work files that had been accidentally deleted from the shared drive. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Jennifer and Derek, people I'd considered friendly colleagues, if not friends. People who'd apparently watched Emma building her case against me and said nothing. Where is she now? Legal department. Filing a formal complaint and meeting with our attorneys about potential criminal charges. Marcus stood up, smoothing his tie, a nervous habit I'd seen him display only in the most stressful client meeting. I have to suspend you pending a full investigation. Company policy, no exceptions. The words hit me like physical blows. Suspended. Investigation, criminal charges. My career imploding in real time, while my sister systematically destroyed everything I'd built. I need to see her. I need to talk to her. Absolutely not. Any contact could be construed as intimidation or retaliation. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Rachel, if this is some kind of family dispute that got out of hand, now's the time to tell me. If there's context I'm missing, if there was some kind of collaboration that got complicated. The context is that I'm innocent. My voice came out stronger than I felt. The context is that I've never stolen anything from anyone in my life, least of all from my sister. He studied my face for a long moment. I hope that's true. Because if it's not, you're looking at criminal charges, civil liability, and the end of your career in this industry. The security escort felt like a perp walk. Every face in the office turned to watch as I was marched through the cubicles where I'd spent the best years of my life. Whispers followed in my wake, and I caught fragments that made my skin crawl. Always seemed too ambitious. Never trusted her. Poor Emma, finally speaking up. I heard she's been stealing ideas for months. Family dynamics are so toxic. Sarah from graphic design wouldn't meet my eyes as I passed her desk. Tom from client services actually turned his back. These were people I'd worked with for years, people I'd collaborated with on countless projects, people who'd celebrated my successes and commiserated over my failures. Now they were looking at me like I was a stranger. Worse, like I was a criminal. In the elevator, the security guard, Jeff, who I'd chatted with about his daughter's soccer games for years, wouldn't meet my eyes. Jeff, you know me. You know I wouldn't do this. He stared at the floor numbers, his jaw tight. I'm sorry, Rachel. I really am, but I've got to follow protocol. The elevator descended in suffocating silence. Each floor that passed felt like another piece of my life disappearing. Fifth floor, where I'd presented my first major campaign. Fourth floor, where Emma's desk sat, probably empty now while she met with lawyers. Third floor, where Marcus had his office, where just yesterday he'd praised my innovative approach to the Morrison account. The lobby felt like a gauntlet. My parents stood by the reception desk, their faces carefully neutral. When they saw me approaching with security, Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like disappointment. Rachel? Dad stepped forward, his voice cautious. What's happening? They wouldn't tell us anything, just said there was an urgent family situation. They suspended me. My voice cracked on the words, the reality hitting me anew. Emma filed a complaint. She says I stole her work. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I waited for them to immediately dismiss the accusation, to rally around me, to express the outrage I felt burning in my chest. Instead, Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably, glancing at Mom before speaking. Honey, maybe we should all sit down and talk about this calmly. Try to understand what's really happening here. The words were a knife between my ribs. Sit down and talk? Dad, she's lying. She's destroying my career with lies. We don't know what's true yet, Mom said softly, her voice carrying a tremor I'd never heard before. Emma was very upset when she called us this morning. She said you've been taking credit for her work for months. She was crying. Rachel, really crying. And you believed her? My voice rose, drawing stares from other people in the lobby. A woman with a briefcase hurried past, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in the corporate space. Without even talking to me first? She showed us some of the files, Rachel. Dad's voice was gentle, which somehow made it infinitely worse than if he'd been angry. The timestamps, the emails. It's pretty compelling evidence. The floor felt like it was tilting under my feet. What files? What emails? She has documentation going back months, Mom explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Design work, strategy documents, even notes from client meetings, all dated before the versions you submitted. I stared at my parents, the people who were supposed to know me better than anyone in the world, and saw doubt in their eyes. Not certainty in my innocence, not fierce protection of their daughter. Doubt. She's my sister, I whispered. I taught her everything she knows. I got her this job. I've spent 5 years building her career. Maybe that's part of the problem, Mom said quietly, her words barely audible over the lobby's ambient noise. Maybe the lines got blurred somewhere along the way. Maybe without realizing it, you started appropriating her contributions. The security guard cleared his throat. Ma'am, I need to ask you to leave the premises now. I walked out of the building where I'd built my career, my parents trailing behind me like mourners at a funeral. The afternoon sun felt harsh against my skin, everything too bright and sharp-edged. The city noise, traffic, construction, people talking, seemed overwhelmingly loud after the suffocating quiet of that conference room. Where is she? I asked as we reached the parking garage, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. She's staying with us tonight, Dad said carefully. She's pretty shaken up about all this. She said filing the complaint was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do. Of course she was staying with them. Of course she'd gotten there first, planted her version of events, built her foundation of lies while I was blindsided in that conference room. She called you before she filed the complaint? This morning, around 7. Mom wrapped her arms around herself even though the garage wasn't cold. She was barely coherent, she was crying so hard, said she couldn't stay quiet anymore, that her conscience wouldn't let her. Her conscience. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Rachel, maybe we should all get dinner tonight. Talk this through as a family. Try to figure out what really happened. Dad's voice carried a note of desperate hope, as if family dinner could somehow untangle this nightmare. A family. I pulled away from their reaching hands. Is that what we are? because it feels like you've already chosen sides. I drove home in a daze, muscle memory navigating the familiar streets while my mind reeled. How had Emma done it? How had she created time-stamped files that predated my work? How had she gained access to my company email account? How had she convinced Jennifer and Derek to provide witness statements? The questions multiplied with each mile, creating an increasingly complex web of deception that seemed impossible to untangle. My apartment felt like a crime scene when I walked in. Everything looked the same furniture, the same photos on the walls, the same coffee cup I'd left in the sink that morning. But nothing felt right. The space that had always been my sanctuary now felt contaminated somehow, as if Emma's betrayal had infected every corner. I went straight to my home office, booting up my computer with shaking hands. The Morrison campaign files were all there, exactly as I'd left them. Months of work, thousands of hours of creativity and strategy and pure inspiration. I opened the first file and checked the creation date, March 15th. Then I thought about Emma's file from Marcus's laptop screen. Her version had been dated March 1st. I spent the next 6 hours going through every file, every email, every piece of documentation related to the campaign. Everything was there, in my style, with my creative fingerprints all over it. My late-night brainstorming sessions, my iterative design process, my strategic thinking, it was all documented. But somehow, Emma had versions that predated all of mine. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, to avoid whatever fresh torment she had planned, but I needed answers. I answered on the fourth ring. "Hello, Emma." "Rachel." Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, carrying none of the confidence she'd displayed in her formal complaint. "I heard what happened today." "You heard." I kept my voice carefully neutral, though my hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. "Interesting choice of words, considering you caused it." I didn't want it to go this far. I really didn't. She sounded like she was crying, her voice thick with tears. But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "You've been stealing my work for months." "Emma, stop. Just stop." I closed my eyes, trying to find some thread of the relationship we used to have. "We both know that's not true. The timestamps don't lie, Rachel. The files don't lie." "Then help me understand. Help me understand how you created work that looks exactly like mine, weeks before I even started the project." Silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, could almost sense her mind working. "Emma, I've been working on this campaign concept since before you even knew about the Morrison account." Her voice was stronger now, more confident, as if she'd found her footing. "I showed you my ideas, and you took them. You always take them. That's not what happened, and you know it. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been building your entire career on my creativity while keeping me in the background." Her tone shifted, becoming harder, more accusatory. "Did you really think I'd stay quiet forever?" I felt something cold and solid settling in my chest. This wasn't confusion or misunderstanding. This was calculated. "You planned this," I said quietly. "You've been planning this for months." "I've been protecting myself." "There's a difference." "By destroying me?" "By finally getting credit for my own work." Emma's voice was ice cold now, all pretense of tears and regret gone. "You taught me well, Rachel. Maybe too well." The line went dead. I sat in my dark office, staring at the phone screen, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The sister I'd loved and protected and mentored for years was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of systematic deception and calculated betrayal. But Emma had made one crucial mistake. In all her planning, in all her careful file manipulation and timestamp forgery, she'd overlooked something. I opened my laptop and navigated to the U.S. Copyright Office website. My hands moved with steady purpose as I logged into my account and pulled up the registration I'd filed 6 months ago. the moment inspiration had first struck for what would become the Morrison Campaign. Morrison Campaign, Creative Package. Registration Number TX9 456789. Date of registration February 12th, 2024. Copyright owner Rachel Elizabeth Morrison. I'd copyrighted the entire campaign concept the moment inspiration struck, months before Emma even knew the Morrison account existed. Every element she claimed to have created first was legally, provably, undeniably mine. The registration included timestamps from the Copyright Office's own servers, federal timestamps that couldn't be forged or manipulated, timestamps that predated everything in Emma's fabricated portfolio by weeks. I printed the copyright certificate and supporting documentation, my hands steady now for the first time all day. The papers felt solid and real in my hands, truth made tangible. Tomorrow morning, I would walk back into that building. I would sit across from Marcus again, and I would watch Emma's carefully constructed lie crumble to dust. But first, I had a phone call to make. Dad, it's Rachel. I need you and Mom to meet me at the office tomorrow morning at 9. Bring Emma. Rachel, honey, it's late. Can't this wait? No, it can't wait. My voice was calm, controlled, carrying none of the desperation from earlier. Emma wants to play games with evidence and timestamps? Fine, let's play. What do you mean? I mean, I have proof. Real proof. Federal documentation that's going to destroy every lie she's told. I looked down at the copyright certificate, solid and official in my hands, and I want you all there to see it. The next morning, I walked into the agency lobby at 8 a.m. sharp, copyright documentation in a manila folder under my arm. My parents sat in the same chairs they'd occupied the day before. But this time, Emma was with them. She looked smaller than I remembered, almost fragile in her oversized navy blazer, the same blazer I'd helped her pick out for her first job interview 5 years ago. When she saw me approaching, her face went white. Rachel. Mom stood up, reaching for me with tentative hands. We've been up all night talking about this. We want to work something out between all of us. There's nothing to work out. I kept my eyes on Emma, watching as she seemed to shrink further into her chair. There's just the truth. Marcus appeared in the lobby, looking haggard and older than his 55 years. Rachel, you're not supposed to be here without legal representation. I don't need legal representation. I held up the folder. I have something better. I have proof. We filed into the same conference room where my world had imploded 24 hours earlier. This time, Emma sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolchild called to the principal's office. Her confidence from the previous day had evaporated, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. This better be good, Rachel, Marcus said, settling into his chair with visible reluctance, because the evidence against you is pretty damning. Legal is already drafting termination paperwork and considering criminal referrals. The evidence against me is fabricated. I opened the folder and slid the copyright certificate across the table with deliberate precision. This is the U.S. Copyright Office registration for the entire Morrison Campaign Creative Package, filed February 12, 2024, months before Emma claims to have created any of this work. Marcus picked up the document, his eyebrows rising as he scanned the official seal and registration details. The room fell silent except for the rustling of papers and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. This covers everything, I continued, my voice steady and professional. The logo concepts, the narrative strategy, the design elements, the client research methodology, all of it. Here are the original files I submitted to the Copyright Office, with federal timestamps that can't be forged or manipulated. I pulled out additional pages, screenshots from the Copyright Office database, the original design files with embedded metadata, email confirmations from the registration process. Furthermore, I said, watching Emma's face grow increasingly pale, I have documentation showing that Emma didn't even know about the Morrison account until March 20th, when I brought her in to help with secondary research. That's more than a month after she claims to have started developing the campaign concept. I slid another set of documents across the table. Email records showing the first mention of Morrison in Emma's company correspondence. Meeting notes from when I'd first briefed her on the account. Project timelines that clearly established when each team member had been brought onto the account. Marcus was flipping through the pages, his expression growing darker by the second. Mom and Dad sat frozen, watching their carefully constructed understanding of the situation crumble in real time. The question isn't whether I stole Emma's work, I said quietly, my voice carrying across the silent room like a judgment. The question is why my sister spent months planning to destroy my career with fabricated evidence. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel, don't. My voice cut through her attempt at explanation like a blade. Just don't. You've said enough. Marcus looked up from the documents, his face a mixture of anger and disgust. Emma, is this true? Did you fabricate this evidence? The silence stretched for an eternity. Emma's eyes darted between our parents, Marcus and me, looking for some escape route that didn't exist. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered, the words barely audible. That's not an answer, Marcus said sharply. Did you or did you not fabricate evidence of copyright infringement? Emma's face crumpled, tears finally coming in earnest. Yes. Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible across the room. Dad's face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, and finally something that looked like grief for the daughter he thought he knew. Why? The word came out of me like a sob, 5 years of mentorship and love and protection crashing down around us. Emma, why would you do this to me? Because I'm tired of living in your shadow. Her voice was gaining strength now, as if finally telling the truth was liberating. I'm tired of being Rachel's little sister at work. I'm tired of everyone assuming my ideas came from you. I'm tired of watching you get credit for teaching me things I already knew. So you decided to destroy me? I decided to take what should have been mine. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the sister I remembered, before the ambition and resentment had poisoned everything between us. But then it got out of hand, and I didn't know how to stop it. Got out of hand? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You filed false police reports? You forged company documents? You perjured yourself in formal complaints? You didn't just lie, Emma, you committed crimes. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Ms. Morrison, Emma, you're terminated immediately. Security will escort you out. And you can expect to hear from our legal department about potential criminal charges for fraud, corporate espionage, and filing false reports. Please. Emma turned to our parents, her voice breaking. Mom, Dad, I know I messed up, but… You didn't mess up, Dad said quietly, his voice carrying a finality I'd never heard before. You systematically planned to ruin your sister's career with lies. That's not a mistake, Emma. That's malicious criminal behavior. I can fix this, Emma said desperately, tears streaming down her face. I can take it all back. Say I was confused. It's too late for that, Marcus said coldly. You've committed multiple felonies. This is beyond company discipline now. This is a matter for law enforcement. The security escort was swift this time. Emma didn't resist as they led her away, but she turned back once to look at me, her face streaked with tears and mascara. I'm sorry, she mouthed, the words carrying no weight after everything she'd done. I watched my sister disappear through the lobby doors and felt nothing but emptiness where 5 years of love and mentorship used to be. Rachel. Marcus turned to me, his voice heavy with regret. Obviously, you're fully reinstated with our sincere apologies. We should have investigated more thoroughly before taking any action against you. Thank you, I said, though the words felt hollow. I understand you were responding to what appeared to be credible evidence. Is there anything we can do? Any way we can make this right? I looked around the conference room where my career had nearly ended, then at my parents who sat in stunned silence, and finally at the copyright certificate that had saved my professional life. Just make sure she can't do this to anyone else. My parents approached me cautiously as Marcus left to deal with the legal implications, like I was a wounded animal that might lash out. Rachel, honey, Mom began, her voice trembling. We're so sorry, Dad finished, his words carrying the weight of their betrayal. We should have believed you from the beginning. I looked at them. These people who had raised me, who claimed to love me unconditionally, and saw strangers. Yes, I said simply. You should have. I walked out of that conference room with my career intact and my family destroyed. The Morrison campaign went on to win 3 major industry awards, launching my reputation to heights I'd always dreamed of reaching. But success tastes different when it comes at the cost of everything you thought you could trust. Emma was arrested 3 days later on charges of fraud, forgery, and filing false reports. The case made industry news as an example of how sibling rivalry could escalate into criminal behavior. She pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 2 years probation and community service. I never saw her again after that day in the conference room. Because betrayal isn't just about what someone takes from you, it's about what they reveal about themselves, and about what they force you to see about everyone else who is supposed to stand by you. The copyright certificate still hangs in my corner office, framed next to my industry awards, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Evidence doesn't lie. Timestamps can be forged. But federal registration? That's forever. And sometimes, the people who lie are the ones you love most.